Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Millionaires are being made all season long at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. One-week fantasy means no season-long commitments. Play whenever you want. Got a player who's hurt? No problem. Injuries won't derail your shot at victory because it's like a new season every week. So you're never stuck with the same players. Pick your team in minutes and you could be on your way to winning huge cash. This season, one listener turned $10 into $5,000. Another turned $2 into $10,000. And a new millionaire has been crowned nearly every week this season at DraftKings.com. You could be next. Imagine winning $1 million in one day just playing fantasy football at DraftKings. Head to DraftKings.com now and use promo code Spreaker to play free in the $10 million Fantasy Football World Championships. DraftKings.com. Bigger events, bigger winnings, bigger millionaires. Enter Spreaker now at DraftKings.com. DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
1, 2. Check me out right here, yo.
Welcome back to another edition of the Bob Sullivan Show here on if you would like to call in, the number is 585-633-7487. Like right here in the first hour by Carlos Page of SportsaholicsRadio.com. Carlos, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Bob. Appreciate you for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. I want to talk here in this first segment about college football, the firings that have gone on so far. Bo Pelini gone at Nebraska, Will Muschamp at Florida, that had been announced a couple weeks ago. Still no announcement on Brady Hoke at Michigan. Are you surprised if you haven't heard anything about that yet? And there's also been a rumor that he's coming back. Which surprises you more?
Definitely that he's even having the thought of being retained at this point. Everything that Hope went through with the concussion scandal that went down, and his record against Ohio State and the blowout that just happened. So it's hard for me to fathom that they was bringing this guy back under all the scrutiny, and with the AD Dave Vandermeer let go as well. I thought it was going to be a fresh, clean slate. So the thought of Brady Hope returning to Michigan was very, very fascinating to me.
What do you think Michigan's thought process is? Because it seems like there's a lot. Like if you were like last year, I'd understand. Okay, maybe the candidates aren't as hot if you're not going to fire him last year. But this year, I mean, Harbaugh is going to be available. Maybe you don't get him. I don't think there's going to be a lot more candidates out there available this year that are sexier names than there were last year. Why wouldn't you make this move right now if you're Michigan?
Oh, I totally agree. It is to wait this process out and make it any longer than you have to is just doing yourself a disservice. But the Michigan program prides itself on being doing things the right way. So I can see them trying to do things by the right way by Brady Hoke, who is a Michigan man himself. So maybe they're just prolonging the inevitable, as we all know. But like you said, Harbaugh is going to be out there. You hear all this momentum gaining from Florida, some of the candidates that they have. You would think that you would want to jump right out in front of this thing and get yourself on the right path going right before all these other teams come in and play.
What do you think the perception is of, you're in kind of SEC country, they're in Tennessee. What is the perception of Michigan outside of the Big Ten, Nebraska outside of Nebraska itself? What is the perception in the South of these teams up north?
Well, definitely a lot of respect is owed to the tradition of Michigan and, the Big Ten Conference as it was constructed in this earlier day. But now, in SEC country, with the recent success that we've had here, it's almost second tier, to be honest with you, because Michigan has struggled over the past, 3 or 4 years, dating back to the Rich Rodriguez era. They've really not contended for anything. So it's a perception that the conference is down. Michigan and Ohio State, those are teams that they're there, from a national power standpoint, but you don't fear them that much. You really don't fear a Nebraska team that, has trouble in its own conference when you're talking about the SEC and the way that the SEC usually cannibalizes itself as it almost did this weekend. So it's definitely, a bad perception when it comes to these type of schools here in SEC country.
What is, as far as, teams in the SEC, traditional teams like Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, what is the amount of hate towards Missouri capitalizing, coming into the conference, third year in, and now they're going to back-to-back SEC championship games? Is there an amount of hate towards Missouri that they've come in and had this early success so far in the conference?
Oh, it's definitely getting there. It's getting to a point where, you think that a Missouri team that struggled in the Big 12 will come in and have this type of success in the SEC, but let's be honest, the SEC East is not what it has been in the traditional past. Georgia is as good as they have been, has never lived up to the potential that you thought that these teams would be under Mark Richt for the most part. I mean, at one point, everyone's predicted Georgia throughout the years to making the national title run, and they just haven't come close in most cases. Tennessee, my home state where we're at now, has went through a lot of problems with coaching, from Phil Fulmer to Lane Kiffin to Derek Dooley to now Butch Jones. They're just now getting on solid footing under Butch Jones, so they've not been the same program, but they're on the rise. Florida's been a mess. Muschamp, he came in and he wasn't able to deliver half of the things they never had an offense in Florida, and they still to this day with the great athletes and recruiting that he has never was able to put a good field out for offensive players. So it's just one of those things. So the East has not been where it's at, and we know that Missouri is was better than what you would expect, but I think the SEC East is about to catch up.
Do you think Tennessee is similar to Nebraska in the fact that, they had success in the 90s and then, kind of held on to with Nebraska, they kind of held on to Solich a little too long. And Fulmer, they kind of held on to him a little too long at Tennessee. And they've really never recovered from either those two leaving. And then the perception inside the state of Nebraska is, we need to be competing for national championships and conference championships. We should be doing that. But in reality, it's a little far-fetched to think that. Tennessee, I kind of get that same sense. Do you get that sense, or do you think that they do have a legit chance to compete at a national championship caliber level?
Well, I think it's definitely a correlation in what you're saying. It does. The parallels are striking when you think about Frank Solich and Phil Fulmer, and it's always hard for any program to get rid of a coach, that's had success, had national championships. I'm not sure. I don't think Solich had one, but in Phil Fulmer's case, bring the national championship. It's always hard to let go of that type of guy. I feel like Tennessee maybe, they did a little too soon, and they did pay for it, and the same thing can be said about Nebraska. But another correlation is that the way that these type of teams have to recruit, Nebraska, from what I understand, doesn't have the most, fertile ground in and out the Nebraska state. So they have to mine, California, Florida, these different places that traditional powers mine as well. So Tennessee's on the same boat. We're just now getting to a point where you're starting to see recruits come out of, Tennessee, and Jalen Hurd, Josh Malone, a few other guys. Derek Barnett is another Tennessee guy. So, Tennessee's getting to the point now that they can build some of their roster around those Tennessee kids. So maybe it's a little bit better in that standpoint. But, when you fire that coach, you got to have a plan in place if you're going to do it. And Tennessee, I don't think they had a plan in place. And it seems like Nebraska, it happened so sudden. I'm not sure if they had any type of plan in place, but I would be surprised to see how this process goes about their next coach.
In the last 15 years, what program do you think has been the most negatively affected by switching conferences?
That is a good question. I'll tell you that much. I always go with the Maryland. I always think that they've done themselves such a disservice by, taking away the ACC name. Maryland was synonymous with the ACC. I mean, it's just one of those things. I also think some of the, Big East teams that have traveled down Syracuse, I don't think that it's particularly thing, the whole Big East dissolving cause so much chaos that I just hate to think that Syracuse is playing in the ACC and Maryland is not. I think those two programs. Rutgers hasn't performed too well. A lot of those East Coast teams that have now switched to some of these Big 12 conferences and things like that have not performed well. I think it has to do with the travel. I think it has to do with the different stipulations that they're not used to. So that's an interesting question, and, it's one that's yet to remain seen because there's going to be some other schools that have problems as they switch over and align themselves with these different conferences.
Looking at the, as far as, the Final Four goes for college football, the 14 playoff, do you think this is, the whole thing behind a playoff was to eliminate controversy, but not now. It's to eliminate controversy at the end of the year. It seems like there's far more controversy right now than there's ever been, with one or two at the end of the season and the BCS. There's far more controversy over who's going to be in that Final Four, whether if an SEC team, say Alabama, loses in the SEC title game, do you keep a 2-loss SEC team out of the Final Four? And it's looking that way. Then the world would explode if that happened. At least the South would explode if that happened. But
you're right about that.
Do you think? Have you ever seen so much controversy? And how far away are we from an 18 playoff?
To answer your last question first, I think the 8-game playoff is it just makes too much sense not to do. Like you said, this is way bigger than the BCS era, in my opinion. You got at least four major college fan bases that's going to be involved in this thing in the top four. And that's not even counting the teams behind, maybe the 5, 7 teams that could sneak in there. So you're talking about a populace that's all over the country from these fan bases that you're going to get that's going to generate clicks on the internet, that's going to generate ratings and things of that. The magnitude and scope of it is humongous. And we've all said this before, Bob. I'm pretty sure you said yourself, why don't they just do this playoff? It's going to generate a lot more money, and it's just going to be great for the entire sport. They finally did it, and you see what the effect is. This is way bigger than what the BCS could have been because it's just 2 or 3 teams at the top of this balance. So I think that's definitely been a great change in the dynamic. Every game that you look at almost has playoff implications, and it just sounds so funny to say that in college football, playoff implications. But going back to the SEC thing, it's going to be tough, but I think Alabama, they're going to have Missouri. Missouri's a good team, don't get me wrong, and it's just been reported from what I understand that Matty Mark has been playing half the season with an injured shoulder. So, I just don't think they're going to be able to physically do anything with a tough, and as you've seen in the Auburn game, Alabama team. Alabama's on a mission, and, they're going to represent the SEC, I think, no matter what in this thing. It's going to be tough for Missouri to really do anything, even though Missouri's a good club.
Do you think it has taken the 14 playoff, there's some people out there that think that it's taken away from the importance of the regular season. I think just the opposite. I think it's, I think it's kind of like that second wild card in baseball where, just opening it up, it leaves teams still in the race towards the end of the season that otherwise wouldn't be in the race. And kind of the same way in college football. Like, you look at Ohio State, they wouldn't be in the race right now for national championship. You keep going on the line, Baylor, TCU, there'd be those two also wouldn't be in the question. Do you think that college football is better because the regular season is better now, or do you think it's taken a little away from the regular season?
I think exactly like you on this, Bob. It's absolutely better for college football. It's always a top story now. How many people look forward to Tuesdays when I'm doing my production work? I'm doing the show Tuesday. I'm looking for those college football rankings to come out that I can see. It causes controversy, which means more people talking about it, and just better things. Like I was saying, you have all these different fan bases spread across the country. You're talking about major universities like Baylor, Ohio State, TCU, Florida State, Alabama, so you're going to get a huge response from it, and it makes you think, I don't know why they didn't do this soon enough, but it definitely, I don't think, takes away from, that rivalry week was one of the best rivalry weeks I've seen in a long time. Every game had some type of importance to it, and not just it being a rivalry with your team. Like that Florida and Florida State game was a tremendous game. From a standpoint of what you've seen, it wasn't the most beautiful from the eye, the way that Jameis Winston and Treon Harris went back and forth. But the way that these guys showed such emotion and you knew what was on the line, this made for probably one of the best rivalries I've seen over the past decade.
Well, we're going to go ahead and take our first break here on the Bob Sullivan Show. We will be right back, talk a little bit more college football. If you want to call in and talk to me or Carlos, the number is 585-633-7487. You're listening to the Bob Sullivan Show here on Late